Hey, so this is going to be a video about dating and relationships and inceldom. Um, it's been, I guess I made my video just a week or so ago about my trip to a brothel. So this is something that's kind of fresh in my mind. And yes, this video is going to be one of the few where I actually showcase one of the few things I've done right in my dating life. And, I don't feel bad if that comes off as a little bit braggadocious because I have done most things wrong. And as all my videos previously have stated, I spend a lot of time deprecating myself. So for those of you that want to, call me humble bragging or whatever here, well, then go have the dignity to at least watch my other videos to see that I'm not before you bash me too much. But anyways, I'm sure probably for the most part that won't happen. But anyways, this video, like I said, for those of you that don't know, just a very quick background. I'm 34, haven't had much in the way of relationships throughout my life. In fact, the first time I've ever had any real intimacy was going to a brothel a few weeks ago at age 34, and finally dropped my V card. But up until then, not much. And I talk with incels sometimes, though I don't define myself as one because I don't agree with a lot of things that incels say. And also, as I'm about to state here, I guess you could say I don't think my life fully fits the term incel, which means involuntary celibate. There's been times I've had the opportunity for relationships and I've turned them down. And there's some occasions I very, very much regret not pursuing those relationships more. And there are a few, though, I very, very much do not regret. And I'm very happy with my choice on that. And I'm going to go into a few of those occasions as well as compare them with some other people I know as to why I'm happy about that. First off, straying away from my own life for a bit, being 34, one thing I do agree with incels on, the hardest thing sometimes about being single is watching other people as you grow up from age 15 to 34, 35, whatever, up until the time you get to your middle ages, watching other people date and have relationships and having none yourself. It's kind of like wealth inequality. It's a lot harder to stomach wealth inequality when you see others who have vastly more than yourself and then you don't have very much, as opposed to if everybody's poor. I mean, that is kind of the hardest thing about dating or about being single and watching other people around you date and get married, etc., etc. So I understand being single is not always wonderful, and trust me, that is possibly one of my biggest regrets in life. Not just dating, but in general, social stuff, relationships has been the biggest weakness throughout the course of my life ever since I was very, very young. So I 100% agree with incels on at least that one note, and in general, it's a big area of life that I'm working to always improve on. However, um, there are worse things than being single, which is the point of this video. And there's being in a bad relationship is a much lower circle of hell than being single sometimes. And straying away from my own life to pick a few examples, within the male gender of my family, there's a lot of men that are very unsuccessful at dating. I mean, my brother's like 3 years younger than me, and he's actually really good looking, and he's much better at talking to women than I am, and he's very unsuccessful at dating himself. You know, uh, like a lot of my other relatives, they didn't date until their 30s, and then a lot of the women they dated weren't particularly wonderful. Um, but one cousin I have particularly stands out to me because he's about the same age as me and a little bit similar to me in some regards. Um, he has been married for about 9 years, but I consider him overall less successful in the world of dating than myself. And that is because, not because I see it in a condescending way, but just because I see it, I don't know how he could ever be happy with the relationship he has in his life. The girl he married within a year of dating him, and I know this is going to come across as a little bit shallow, but there's a lot of components to relationship: personality, looks, everything. All of those melded away. She completely changed. Like they had the same job role, EMTs, and then she like quit her job, expected him to take care of her, expected him to buy her a house, and she again, it's going to sound shallow, but she at least doubled her body weight. And we're talking in a very small time span in less than a year, which is very unusual. Very few people gain that much weight that quickly. And to be honest, too, this will all be excusable if maybe they had just a wonderful personal connection, but they don't. They do not have a great personal. I mean, I guess they can stomach each other, but they don't have a great personal connection. They fight like cats and dogs. And I mean, they've been married now though for like 8 or 9 years or whatever, and I don't envy him in the slightest. And I don't say this because I'm just trying to gossip about my cousin here. I mean, none of you will ever meet him, but point is I look at him and some other guys I know who are some guys I knew from high school as well who are in terrible relationships. Like one guy I know who married a girl mostly for money, and she is the most spoiled, obnoxious creature I've ever known in my life. And I don't care if her parents were billionaires; it would not be worth it being married to her. And I think he regrets his life decision a lot. Because like I said, I mean, he didn't say that he married her for money, but almost everybody kind of knew it because he'd always said that money was the only thing that mattered to him in life. And then he found a rich girl at the college he went to, and only problem is she makes, even if you were a billionaire, like I said, it would suck being married to her. And the same, by the way, it's not an anti-women video. The same is true for a lot of men that I've seen some women, marry. There's some girls from my high school class and some of my female relatives. But point just being, being in a bad relationship is a far lower circle of hell than being single. And again, as I've already stated, being single all the time is not a good thing. But that's the one thing I think I have done right throughout my 34 years on this planet. There's been a couple of opportunities I've had for relationships that I passed up on, and I could not be happier about the fact that I passed up on them. And by the way, there's at least 5 times as many or more the other way around that I wish I hadn't passed up on. So again, I'm not trying to humble brag here. But, for instance, back when I went to prom, in high school, there was a girl that actually asked me to prom, and I didn't ask her, and it's because I didn't really have any physical or personal attraction to her. But I didn't want to be rude or be mean, and she never treated me badly. She was personally nice to me. But to be blunt, the only reason I think she asked me is because our lockers were relatively close to each other, and also we were both, like, I was almost the second shortest guy in the class, and she was by a long shot the shortest girl in the class, and I think she just felt that that meant we had to go together because it would look less awkward than if like a 6'2" guy went with her being like 4'9" or whatever. So she took a 5'7" guy. I mean, I don't know. It sounds weird, but I can just tell you I think that's why. But there was no physical or personal attraction between us. And on the physical part, well, years later she came out as being a lesbian. And, I mean, not that there's anything wrong with that, but I don't think she ever had any desire to attract men. So it was no wonder I didn't really feel anything towards her. Personality-wise, she was not a bad person. I didn't actively dislike her, but I would say that she was a weird mix of snarkiness and lack of intelligence that did not mix well. If you're going to be really, snarky and full of yourself, you better at least have some brains to back it up. And she really didn't have a lot, but she had a lot of snarkiness. Like when we went to this goofy movie with Nicolas Cage, I think it was called The Knowing or whatever, after prom with some of her friends, listening to her and all of her dorky friends, all of whom were about the same as her, talk about, all the Christian themes in that movie, even though I wouldn't say it was a particularly religious movie, and at the time I wasn't an atheist, I mean, as I am now, but point just being, they just were such a bunch of arrogant dorks. And I mean, girls can be dorks just like guys can be dorks, and, her and her goofy friends were a bunch of dorks. And I remember thinking, oh gosh, it's like, yeah, I don't think I'd want to be around these people for too long. But anyways, again, I didn't dislike her, it just limited. And I could tell she did make some attempts to flirt with me after that, like on Facebook and stuff, and maybe even wanted to be in a relationship, but I completely ignored it because there was just nothing there. I had no physical or personal attraction to her at all. And I don't regret that. I don't, if there's nothing there, there's just no point in it, and that goes for all relationships in life. If you just have no connection with somebody, I mean, you don't have to go murder them violently in their sleep, but you really shouldn't make an active effort to be a part of their life if they don't want you and you don't really want to be a part of theirs, just for the sake of having somebody in your life. Another time, another instance, probably like this was a person who was actually a full-out toxic person. This first girl I listed, she wasn't a toxic person. I don't want to bash her too much because she wasn't a bad person. But the next person I met was like legitimately a toxic person, and I'm legitimately glad that I did not try to pursue a relationship with her. She was a girl that I met on Tinder, and I didn't get to know her super well because luckily I was smart enough to recognize early on some major red flags. But here's the one thing that probably would have hooked a lot of guys hook, line, and sinker, and maybe even sometimes including myself, at least initially. She was very pretty. I mean, her profession was basically she had her own small beauty company. And when I say small, I think I do mean small. I think it was mostly just being funded by her family. But I mean, she was very attractive. She was a little bit older than me. Like I was at the time 33. She was like 36, 37. And usually women that are that much older don't go for guys that are a bit younger than themselves. And I found her to be kind of an interesting person. In the beginning, she came across as very, very nice and very polite, and I kept wondering exactly where's the beef here. What's wrong exactly here? But a week or so passed and nothing was wrong, other than the fact that she texted me more often than I wish that she did. And there was some weird stuff going on. Like she was supposedly living at the time in Columbus, but then she had to go back in Columbus, Ohio, that is. And then she had to go back to like New York for a while around the time we were going to meet, which seemed like very suspicious. But again, I don't know. She was nice enough that, and she wasn't asking for money or anything, so no big red flags. But there was one little problem that kept developing over the course of that month. She kept getting more and more pushy and assertive and disrespectful. And and I mean about little things. Like, it'd be like, why didn't you text me at such and such time today? What are you eating for dinner? You shouldn't eat that for dinner. When do you start work? At the time I hadn't started my new job yet. So it's like, well, what are you doing in the meantime? What are you doing for money? Very, very, again, I appreciate taking an interest in my life, but she was also very condescending about it, like telling me everything that I should or should not do. And it was getting slowly but surely worse over the course of a month. But I was starting to get alarmed by it, but I was still thinking, well, she's still relatively nice. And she was a smart girl, and she was pretty. And again, there were still no major red flags. But then it started like towards the last week or so before I cut contact with her, it started getting quite a bit worse. She started getting much more pushy about like things like, about what times I needed to text her back of the day, to the point that it was getting very weird. And I started wondering if I needed to cut contact with her. Well, then the major, you know, breaking point came when she I won't say exactly what happened, but I was having a lot of my relatives come and visit that week, and I was kind of uptight about it because there was a lot of relatives to visit, and I was going to then go visit them in Cleveland. It was going to be a bit of an ordeal, and I was a little excited, but also just a lot of family members can be kind of stressful. And I didn't really say much about it, but I just said something to her in the effect of like, well, this is going to be an ordeal, blah, blah, blah. And I don't really even want to say what she said, but she said something that was so stupid, so aggressive, so disrespectful to me, regarding what her opinion is on, my family and how or how I should go to these events or how I should handle them, going to big familial events. That was, you know, again, it's hard to explain exactly what she said because you'd have to know kind of the context, but it was something that even if she'd been married to me for a decade, I would have considered a very condescending, ridiculous, and stupid thing to say. But she said it and she never apologized for it. She just abruptly, just basically eviscerated me. And I don't think she even realized what she did was wrong. I think to her view, this was just like what a guy owed her in a relationship. I think she was one of those girls that thought, well, what I do in the relationship is like I'm pretty, and in return, I do literally anything and everything I want to the guy, and that's he's a beaten dog and he has to deal with it. And most girls aren't that way, by the way. Including most attractive women. I mean, most girls and most men aren't that way either towards women. But this girl was, and now I'm beginning to see why, as attractive as she was and moderately successful in her career, why she maybe had some issues with dating herself, because there are very few men out there, even to an attractive woman, that just want to be treated like a beaten dog all day, you know. And she had been progressively getting more and more that way until she just crossed the major red line. But see, of course, some of you will think, well, what's the point? You only went like a month or so. and she only said like one or two really bad things to you before you cut contact, well, that's kind of the point. That's where I've kind of specialized, at least, is in avoiding the ultra toxic relationships. I immediately cut contact with her, and she immediately, as you can imagine, started getting on to me like, how dare you cut contact with me, blah, 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 blah. But, and then eventually she just left me alone. Some guys out there would just keep going down that rabbit hole. They would, no matter how badly a girl treated them, if she's relatively attractive and normal, they will go down that rabbit hole until it kills them. And that is dangerous. Going certain relationships, be they dating, be they work, be they familial relationships, they can kill you in life. I mean, not sometimes physically, but I mean, they will make life unlivable to the point that it eats you from the inside out and that you no longer want to live. I am certain of that. As somebody who is a loner who needs to get better at having more relationships, that there are still some that I do not regret. And that absolutely applies to some of the dating relationships I've had. And so that's kind of the overall point of this video. It's meant to be not really a brag video, but it's meant to be the one affirmation both to myself and to my viewers, particularly those that define themselves as incels, is that ultimately there are much worse things in life than being single. And one of those things is being in a truly toxic relationship. And again, with the caveat that being single for 34 years or more or less sucks. And in general, I would not recommend it. Okay, I very much wish I had dated more. I wish I had done better with relationships in general throughout my life. The best memories in my life have always been connected with having good relationships and good people around me. And on the rare occasion, I've had, women that I both like personally and physically in my life were some of the best moments in life. But I will exchange heaven on earth for not having hell on earth most days, And like I said, that being in a toxic relationship is hell on earth. So, if you've had, similar experiences where you believe, that there's far worse things than being single and, good and funny or interesting examples of toxic relationships, both male and female. I know my channel viewers are probably mostly male, but I don't discourage women from commenting on it if they want to. Feel free to comment and, tell me about yours. But I'll have an interesting video probably on this in a few weeks. I'm going to a speed dating session at Scottsdale, Arizona, so we'll see how that goes. If I actually can keep myself motivated to go to that, but we'll see. And, have some other videos pending in the mix, so as usual, thanks for watching. Oh, and the quote I wanted to end this on was, remember, oh, good Lord, I'm going to ruin the whole video, forget the crappy quote that I was going to end the whole thing on. You know what? Okay, well, my videos suck anyway, so I'll post it when I remember the quote I was going to end. Oh, okay, yeah, as Robin Williams once said, as the thing I'm going to end the quote on. Sorry for a lame way to end this, but yeah, the worst thing in life is not being alone. It's being around people that make you feel alone. And, of course, Robin Williams, the famous actor, I think that was a very good quote of his. And I think he even maybe was ripping that off from someone else, but now I'm ripping it off from him. So I think that's a good quote to end it on. And as usual, thanks for watching and see you next time. Bye.